the place that we want to start with is when you got your real estate license, you thought you were coming into real estate to just be a real estate agent. But truly what you are doing is you're going to be a leader. So part of what your responsibility of being a real estate agent is to actually be a leader. And the number one skill that a leader has is communication. Okay. And through that process, really, ultimately what leadership is about influence. So your job really as a real estate agent is to influence people. And as you work on that, welcome. As you work on that in terms of influence, part of what a good leader will do is they will influence people and get them to focus in the right areas. Okay, and so we're going to talk more about that as we go through and do this. So, all right. So here's where we're going to start. Is where I want to start with is this. There are two parts to a listing presentation. Okay, so I'm kind of making this T-square up here because there are two parts to a listing presentation. The first part of any, and really this is true in terms of a buyer presentation as well. So just kind of keep in mind this first part we're going to talk about actually does apply to the buyer side of things as well, but we're going to talk listings today. Okay, so the first part of a listing presentation is choose me. Okay. The second part of the listing presentation then is going to be price. So the first thing that has to happen anytime you're going to go out and work with a seller, but again, keep in mind, this works for the same side with a buyer as well, but we're going to talk listings and with sellers. The first part of it is choose me. Okay, so we've got to get the seller to first choose us before we worry about anything on price. So let me tell you what that means. What I mean by that then is, you got it? So what I mean by that in terms of choosing you, there are a few things that have to happen as part of the listing presentation in order to get them to choose you. But what I mean by this is we are not going to talk about the price with the seller until we know they have chosen us. So with that in mind, yeah, Luz is looking at me like, what?
What? That's right.
So yeah, here's the question for you then, Luz. If that's true, how are you going to handle it then if you were on the phone talking with a potential seller and they were to say to you, so either one of two things, how much do you think my home is worth? Or what are you going to charge me in terms of a commission? How are you going to answer that based on what I said here is there's two parts. First is choose me and don't talk price. Do not talk price until they've chosen. So how are you going to handle it if somebody says either what's the price of my house or what's the commission you're going to charge me? Based on what I just said of don't talk about it until they choose you.
And generally, that's one of the first things they say.
Right. So how are you going to handle it? What are you going to say?
I
Brandon?
always just tell them like, you know, we're about to get to that. Let me just go run through some things for you and show you the value of your home and kind of the representation that I'm going to give you during this process.
Okay, good. Just give me an idea. Like how much do you think?
Oh, you know what? I'm so glad you asked that. But like I said, we're about to get to that point. But you know what? I really think that you'd be really interested in how we're going to represent your home and how many areas we're going to hit and how many buyers we're going to attract, which is the most important part to get you the most money.
Okay, good. Like it. Good. So just keep in mind, you've got to use a few different ways of handling this because now why? I guess let me even start with that. Let's back up to that. Why? Why do we not want to talk about the price or the commission until they've chosen us?
Can't run that value.
Okay, good. And therefore in their mind, what?
They're just so focused on, oh crap, I'm having to pay this guy 6% or 7% and my home is only worth XYZ. And they're more focused on the numbers rather than what you're providing and how much it's going to attract.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to say it a little differently, but you're right on. At the end of the day, basically what it means is this. In their mind, in the consumer's mind, you're no different than any other agent. So just kind of keep in mind that from the consumer standpoint, their thought about you as an agent is you're all the same. You're going to do the exact same thing that everyone else does. And so therefore, why should I not go over to the company that has all the billboards on I-15 and list my house with them because it's going to be a lot cheaper? That's what's going on in their mind. And so that's why I'm saying, do not talk price or commission until they've chosen. So now how do we get them to choose us? And so that's what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you first 6 things, really only 5 of them have to happen, but 6 things that you have to do or that have to take place before you're going to then talk about price. So I'm going to first give you these. We're going to list these up here. Then we're going to jump into the listing presentation. I'm going to show you where each of these pieces fits into our listing presentation so that they end up choosing you, so that when we then start to talk about price with them or the commission with them, they're going to be willing to pay the price or the commission that you want to charge, which this will enable you to get a higher commission as you go out and work on these properties. Okay, so some of these won't be surprising to you. The first thing that has to happen though, in order to get them to choose you, is there has to be some type of a connection, or you could say it as rapport that gets built. Okay, there's got to be some type of a connection or rapport that takes place in order for them to then want to choose you. Okay. Then number 2, the next thing that has to happen is they have to feel safe. Okay, we've got to create this scenario where they're going to feel safe with you. Once people feel safe with you, they'll allow you to lead them. But until they feel safe, they're not going to do that. Number 3 is going to be then somewhat related to that, meaning think of it as like 2 sides of a coin, a heads and a tails kind of a thing. Like meaning you're typically not going to have one probably without the other. But the next is trust. The next thing that has to happen is we have to build some type of trust to where they trust you. Because again, once they trust you and they feel safe, they'll allow you to lead them. Okay. Now, on this piece of it, anytime throughout my career that I didn't get a listing. So if I went out on a listing presentation and I didn't get it, I would always call and ask, why did you end up choosing whoever you chose? Or why did you not choose me as the agent? What do you think the most common, and if you were to do the same thing, if every time you went out and you didn't get it, you were to call and ask, what do you think the most common reason people give that they chose somebody else is?
They were cheaper.
Really?
I've heard it.
That's what,
multiple
okay.
times. I've heard it like, oh, why should I pick you over homie doing
Okay.
this for this? Because they're looking for, like, there's some people that are just money motivated
Yeah,
and they want more
for
money
sure.
in their pocket, and you can't, like, those, that's just something that, one thing that they want.
okay, good, like that.
I'd say like a connection, they just felt a connection.
Yeah,
They
usually
liked them.
for me, the answer that I usually got was I just felt more comfortable, or I felt safer with them, or just yeah, it's the connection piece of it. So keep in mind, that's where for me, what I have found is most of the time, if you don't get the listing, it usually is going to come
Or else
down
what
to,
else
I
would they
just
be able to
felt
use
better
for training,
about, or I
though?
felt safer. They may not say safer, but they trusted this person. I just felt
But that has
better.
to be done
Is
in
usually
private,
what they're
though.
going to say. I felt better about this particular person. And that's usually what then leads to that. So we've got to create that. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. Then number 4, the 4th thing that has to happen is we then have to separate ourselves. So I'm going to say separate yourself on here. Okay. The next thing that's got to happen is you have to separate yourself from the competition. And because again, so going back to, in their mind, there's no difference between you and every other agent out there. So we have to create and show that we are separate. We're different than everyone else that's out there. Therefore, that's how we're going to now create this ability to them to pay a higher commission. See, a lot of times we feel like that people are just out looking for the cheapest, but I actually don't believe that's true. And the proof of that, the proof that that's not true is just in the parking lot. walk outside and look at all the different cars that are there in the parking lot. Because if truly all we cared about was the cheapest, don't you think we would have a parking lot full of just like, what, I don't know, what's the cheapest car? What's the cheapest car you could buy today? A smart car?
Or not cheap.
I was gonna say now, like, what's the cheapest car? Like a Hyundai or like, I don't know what, like, just whatever the cheapest Toyota Corolla.
Cheap, it's probably just one that we flat out own and are gonna drive forever until the engine blows up and, you know what I'm saying, like.
You know, like an old school Geo Metro.
Yeah, Geo Metro. I used to own the Geo Metro. So in fact, I had a Geo Metro that had the 3-cylinder engine. And we drove to California one time and got 52 miles to the gallon. It was like, it was crazy, although it was like riding on a lawnmower to the whole everybody. But yeah, so but if, stop and think about it. If all we really cared about was who's the cheapest, like the parking lot would be full of Yugos. Like, I don't know, you guys are all probably too young to even remember a Yugo, right? But or let's just say Geo Metros, but the fact that there are luxury cars sitting out there now, and Georgia's in California today, otherwise I'd be say there's a Lamborghini sitting out there. Like, why would anybody spend that much money on a car? So why would they?
Like nice things.
Yeah, because they,
Like quality,
value.
like-
that's right. At the end of the day, we see the value. See, so notice though, if we see value, which, so that's number 5 then on this is create value. If we see the value, and if you separate yourself from the competition, people will pay for it. So, you were gonna say something, Kat, were you? No? Okay, no, Luz, you raised your hand.
Now, you walk. I don't think
Okay, no worries. Okay, so these are the things that have to happen, and then number 6, once these have happened, then we have to close. So those are the 6 things that have to happen in terms of them choosing us. Now, what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna walk through the listing presentation, and what I'm gonna show you guys is through that listing presentation, how do we do these 6 things? How do we make those things take place before we're gonna talk about the price so that we can get them to choose us first? Then we can get in and we can talk about commission things. Sound good? All right, here we go. So number 1, the first thing that we're gonna do on any listing presentation we get is an acronym. I'm gonna put it up there as TAP. And what TAP stands for is you're going to thank, good, acknowledge, and then promise. Now, if you pay attention, that's typically what we're gonna do. And really, I would say any presentation you ever do, you need to do this. And if you pay attention to when John or George do even like at Summit and stuff, if you really watch, they will typically start with some type of a thank, acknowledge, and promise. Okay, and I try to do that with all of my classes is at the beginning, and you guys probably didn't catch it, but I said, thank you for being here. So I thanked you guys for being here. We want to thank the person, the seller, as we're meeting with them. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Now, the acknowledge part of it. Part of what I like to do and what you should do is when you get to the seller's home, before you go inside the house, try to find something on the exterior of the house that you could acknowledge. A flower bed, the paint color of the door, like how they have put something, whatever it is, try to find something that you could acknowledge them for. Now, what if you pull up though and the house is a piece of junk? Like it's crap. What would you
I would
want?
be like, this is amazing potential for
Uh-oh.
the perfect buyer.
Yeah,
You have
good.
to find the right buyer for you.
Good, yeah, just find something that you can acknowledge. Well,
That's
Fine.
what happens when you are 15 minutes early.
is that it? So find something that you can acknowledge them about. Even if there is nothing on the house that you can acknowledge them for, then acknowledge just their time. I appreciate that you took the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me. So you're gonna find something to acknowledge them on. And then last is we want to make a promise. Promise them that at the end of your meeting, you're gonna have given them some valuable information. Okay, so that's what we want to do is to begin with on every listing presentation, get to the home early. Find something on the house you can acknowledge them for. You go up, you knock on the door, they open the door. Thank them for taking the time to meet with you, acknowledge something about the property if possible. If not, then just their time. And then give them some type of a promise. Hey, I promise that I'm going to give you some good information. The other thing that I will do from time to time in terms of this as well is I sometimes will add some humor in there. So it's depending on the relationship or the connection that I've got with the people, I sometimes will start it. Hey, just thank you for taking the time to meet with me. You know, wow, that flower bed you guys have out there. I don't know who put that together, like who has the green thumb in the family, but that flower bed is beautiful. And I'll throw in, when we put your home on the market, that flower bed is going to help you get your home sold. So, but notice what I just did of saying, when we put your home on the market, I'm already starting to assume and setting up for the close. So that's why I say, try to find something you can acknowledge about the house that you can then use as a, hey, when we put your home on the market, that color of the door, the whatever, is going to help in getting your home sold. Make sense?
So.
Yeah.
Could it be that the house is not that great, but the neighborhood is pretty decent?
Mhm.
So we cannot acknowledge the place where it is, maybe it's not a home, but where it's located.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, the location of your home is going to be awesome. There's going to be a ton of buyers. When we put your home on the market, that's going to be a huge selling point for the people. So yeah, absolutely. You could use location for that as well. All right. Then if it's appropriate, you may even want to throw some humor in there. From time to time, I will say, hey, Chad, you know, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. Wow, the color of the front door, I love what you've done with that or whatever. And I promise I'm going to give you at the end of our meeting, I promise, 4 hours from now, I'm going to have some really good information from you. And they might be like, 4 hours, and I'm just kidding. I won't be that long. It'll only be 3. Then I just kid on that. All right. So we good on this. So you're going to thank, acknowledge, and promise is the first thing we want to do. Number 2, then the next thing that we want to do is, and in fact, I didn't intentionally, I just had this thought. So this morning, typically Brian Burnett at Summit gave us his daily morning routine. I'm going to give you guys mine now, and it's not as impressive, I'll promise, but for me, I typically first thing in the morning, I get out of bed, I go down and I read for about a half an hour. So my first half hour of the day is spent just reading. As soon as that half an hour of reading is done, I immediately then typically, so I say this typically because I'm giving you what I did today is not norm, but typically I then after I've been up for 30 minutes and read, I then go and exercise. Once I'm done exercising, I will come back and actually usually read a little bit more while I calm down, I don't know what you want to call it, but bring my body temperature back down before I go take a shower. So that's usually what happens. Well, last week on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I went and hiked Kings Peak. Have any of you guys ever hiked Kings Peak before? Do you know what's entailed in hiking Kings Peak?
No.
Okay, so typically you're going to drive up to through Wyoming to get into the Uintas. Once you're up in the Uintas, then you drive to a place that's got a big parking lot. Then to make the hike, so actually, let me back up from that. Do you guys even know what Kings Peak is?
Highest peak in Utah.
Yes, it's the highest point in all of Utah. So of all the mountains, it's the highest one, which that would be the idea of why you hike. But so you park, then from there, typically what most people will do is you'll hike 10 miles, you then set up camp. Then the next day you get up and hike another 7.5-ish miles to get to the top of Kings Peak. Then you're going to hike the other 7.5 miles back to camp. Then you usually get up in the morning, you hike the 10 miles out. So a little over 30 miles round trip. Well, so I did that last week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I got home and I have blisters on my feet. Like I haven't exercised at all this whole week because like I was like, I gotta let the blisters on my feet heal before I start running again. So anyway, last night,
Because
though,
you made it to the top,
what's that?
because you made it to the top.
I did make it to the top. I did some, yes. So well, no, that's a whole nother story. I'll save it for another time. But we had one kid that almost didn't. We took a bunch of teenagers with us and we had one that almost didn't. But by the time we were so close, I was like, I don't even care if he comes or not, because like I was done, but
And you saw more pronghorn.
I didn't see any pronghorn,
You kidding? me?
tons of moose.
This
though.
is Mountain View and UV area.
Yeah, I could, yeah, supposedly there are a bunch up there, but we didn't see any. So anyway. Okay, so last night, my wife says to me, hey, and I think she was just trying to get me back into the exercise routine because I was kind of been enjoying all week that I just have been sleeping in. So she's like, hey, let's go and exercise together tomorrow. We'll go out and just do a walk. And I was like, okay, that's great. So we go out. Now, here's the point of this. We're going to talk about number 2 here. So number 2, I usually always just refer to this as the MAP. So MAP. Or you could think of it as a game plan is another way I will say it. Okay. But here's what happened. So last night my wife said, let's go out and walk together. And I said, okay. So we get up this morning and we start to go on which we typically have one day, usually on Saturdays, we will go out and just walk and talk. And so that didn't happen obviously last week because I was up at Kings Peak. So I just assumed that's what we were doing. And typically we just go out on a 2-mile walk and it's a pretty brisk walk that we will go and do that on. But so this morning she said, let's go and do that. Okay. So we go and we start to walk and we get about halfway. So we've gone about a mile and she says, oh, should we walk over to the junior high? And I was like, yeah, sure. That's fine. Whatever. So, cause there's a sky bridge that you would have to cross to get there. So she's like, I just kind of like the slope of going up the hill on that. Okay. So we go do that. We get off the sky bridge. And before when we've done that, we usually just turn around and walk back over the sky bridge. And she goes, oh no, we're going to keep going over to the junior high. And I go, oh, okay. So we keep walking. We get over by the junior high. And she said, usually when I do this, I will go and I'll like go up and down the stairs that are at the junior high 10 times. And when she said, usually, I assumed that meant we're not doing that today. Yeah. So we keep walking and we get there to the stairs and all of a sudden she starts to go up the stairs and I was like, oh, I guess we're going to go up the stairs. So we go up the stairs and back down and then she turns around and goes back and I was like, how many times are we doing this? And she said, well, I usually do 10. So again, I usually do to me means we're not doing that. But then she just keeps going. We keep going up and down the stairs. And I was like, so like, how many times are we going to do this? Now, here's my point. I'm good with all of that if I know where we headed. Like, what's the plan that we're going to do? So I say that and share that story with you from the idea of we all like to know where we're headed. Meaning, if at the start of class, and I always debate doing this, but then it's because it's not real, I usually don't. But I always debate starting the class with, okay, guys, at some point, Sharon's going to open the door and say, the bus is here. And when she does that, we're all going to go get on the bus. If I did that, if I had started the class and said, okay, guys, at some point in the middle of the class, Sharon's going to open the door and say, the bus is here. We're going to then all get up and go get on the bus. What's the first thing you guys would ask me? Yeah, notice that. Like we want to, what?
I would just say, let's go.
JC's like, I'd just be like, all right, whatever. Let's go. But most of the time, people are going to be like, okay, so where are we going and how long are we going to be there? Like, when are we going to get back? That's the same idea of this. So the next thing we want to do after we've done a thank, acknowledge, and promise with the seller is keep in mind, they're probably pretty nervous. Because unless they have sold many houses in their life, they're probably a little like, I don't know what this is going to entail. What's it going to look like? And so we want to give them this game plan or a map here. Now, the map, the MAP on this actually stands for motivation, ability, and price. But I want you guys to just keep in mind, like for us, what I'm about to outline next is we're wanting to find out what their motivation is, their ability to sell, and the price that we're going to do it with. But for now, just keep in mind for now. That what we're doing is just giving them an overview. We're telling them, hey, okay, we're gonna get up tomorrow, we're gonna go out on this walk and we're gonna go over to the junior high and we're gonna go up and down the stairs 10 times. Then we're gonna loop around the junior high and then we're gonna do 10 more of the stairs again before we then finish our walk. Like if my wife would have said that last night, I would have been like, okay, cool. Like I would have been fine with it. But this morning I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, what are we doing? How are we doing this? Because I didn't know where we were going. The next thing we want to do is tell the seller where we're heading. Okay, so this is what that looks like. So the first thing that we're going to do, we'll do it as letter A here. The first thing we want to find out from the seller is, and I'll give you the language we want to use here in just a minute, but we want to find out their needs, wants, and expectations. Okay, so as part of this overview is I'm going to be saying to them, so Chad, thanks for meeting with me. Wow, that flower bed, you've done a great job. I promise I'm going to give you some really good information. Let me give you an overview of what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk about your needs, wants, and your expectations from me as an agent, but then I'll also share with you what I would expect from you. So now keep in mind, I'm not doing the needs, wants, and expectations right now. I'm just telling them that's the first thing we're going to do. Make sense? Sometimes people get lost of like, well, so what am I going to do on this?
You're leading them.
Right now, all we're saying is, here's what we're going to do. Okay. Then B, after we've talked about that, Chad, the needs, wants, and expectations, then we're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold? So now I'm going to write it here for you guys as marketing, but keep in mind, we're not really going to talk about marketing. Like, unless they're worried about it, I'm not going to say anything about how many websites we're on and all that, unless they have those questions. If they have those questions, I will. So, but here, what I'm doing under this marketing piece, so let me tie a few of the things together for you. The idea of the needs, wants, and expectations is to do these three things, basically. Is during this time when I'm going to cover the needs, wants, and expectations, is about me being able to make sure there is some connection and rapport built, that they're going to feel safe and trust me as their agent. Okay. The marketing piece is where we're going to then separate ourselves and be able to create value for them. Okay. But what I'm telling them right now is just, hey, Chad, first we're going to talk about your needs, wants, and your expectations. And I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. Then we're going to talk about, what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than everybody else out there? Okay, so we got a bunch on Zoom that I haven't said this for you guys on Zoom. If you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask. And just if you'll throw your name in the chat box so that I know who is all on there, that would be great as well. What up, Rick? All right, so first is we're going to talk about needs, wants, and expectations. Then we're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than every other agent out there? Then C is we're going to talk about the price. Okay. So now remember, we said we aren't going to talk price until we've done these other things. You can see where we've covered those pieces of it. Now, in terms of the price, what we're going to cover with that is we're first going to talk about the macro, and we'll get into this more in detail in just a minute. But we're first going to talk about just like what's going on in the market today. Then we're going to talk about pricing and how what's going on in the market is going to affect the pricing of their home. And then last on that will be the CMA. Okay. And then D, the fourth thing here is we're going to then close. Okay, so let me show you again what this is looking like so far. So first, we're going to start with thank you, knowledge, promise. So Chad, thanks for having me out. Wow, you've done a great job with your home. There's a ton of features that are going to help us in getting your home sold. And I promise I'm going to give you some really good information before we're done. Now, let me give you an overview of what we're gonna do. First, we're gonna talk about your needs, wants, and expectations, and I'll share with you what I would expect from you as the seller. Then we're gonna talk about what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than everybody else out there in the market? Once we've done that, then we're gonna go through and we'll talk about the market. We're gonna talk about what's going on in the market today and how that's going to affect the pricing on your home. And we'll ultimately then land on the price we're going to market your home at. And then after that, Chad, if you're comfortable and confident that I'm the right person to get your home sold, I'm just gonna ask you to sign some paperwork, okay? Now, notice what happens. So notice the scripting on basically how I do that. Is first, we're gonna talk about needs, wants, and expectations. Then we're gonna talk about what makes me different. Remember, so we're hitting all these things. Then we'll talk about the price, how what's going on in the market today is gonna affect your price. And then we'll ultimately get to the pricing of your home. But at the end of that, if you're comfortable and confident in me, I'm just gonna ask you to sign paperwork. By me doing that and saying, hey, so Chad, if you're comfortable and confident I'm the right person, then I'll just ask you to sign some paperwork, okay? And what are they gonna say when you say, okay?
Okay.
They're usually gonna respond with, okay. Now, that should make closing really simple over here, because notice I've already up here, I somewhat talked about closing. Hey, when we put your home on the market, this is gonna make your house look really good. So I've already subtly closed here. Now I've just said, hey, after we talk about all this stuff, if you're comfortable with me, I'm just gonna ask you to sign paperwork, okay? When they said, okay. So now we've made it very easy when it comes time to close. Okay, any questions on this piece? And tell me your name.
Manny.
Manny,
Trejo.
okay, Manny, good.
What if we say that? If it's a Wednesday or Thursday when you're meeting with them and say, Friday and Saturday, we get more calls, will it be okay if we are ready by Friday or Saturday? You have assumed that by then it will be in the MLS and that you're preparing them and then say, all right, let's go for it.
Yeah, yes, that would work. Yeah, and I'll show you, I'll show you in some other pieces where I incorporate what you're talking about. Because that's gonna be in step 4 usually that I hit on what you're doing. But yes, I love what you're saying. Okay, so any other questions on this before we go to number 3? All right, number 3. So the third thing that we're gonna do now is I usually list this as just, I put it up here as questions. But what we're doing now is we're gonna do the needs, wants, and expectations is here. Go ahead, Lisa.
So Rose, in the step C, when we're talking about the market. We're talking about the market because we're going to establish the price. Is that how it connects?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is, so this, what you said step 3 here, but actually this, so really this becomes step 3, this will be step 4, this will be step 5, and this is step 6. Really, but yes, what I'm gonna do is we're going through all of this, we're trying to create through the number 3, the questions, the needs, wants, and expectations is designed around these 3 things. It's to check the boxes of making sure that there's connection, rapport, they are gonna feel safe and trust. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, when you're saying price, we're not talking about the CMA yet.
Not yet, because remember, we're not gonna talk price until they have, and you just reminded me, I forgot one step. We need to backtrack, but thank you. Yeah, we're not gonna talk price until we know they've chosen me.
Until they sign the contract?
Not signed it, but I am not gonna go past this step B here, or what's gonna be step 4 over here. I'm not gonna go past step 4 until I know they've chosen me as their agent. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so, but I just realized one other piece that I forgot to talk about, and it's not really another step per se, but as part of the thank, acknowledge, and promise, I usually like draw a line like this and say, look at the house. Okay, so after I've done the thank, acknowledge, and promise, and before the overview or the game plan, I want to look at the house. And so there's one of 2 ways you can do this. One is to say, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go look at the house through the eyes of a buyer. Where basically what I would be saying is, I want to come look at your house. And, I'm at the house already. I want to look at your home through the eyes of the buyer, meaning I don't want them to show me through the house. I just want to go discover it on my own. I want to go look at it the way a buyer is going to look at it. So that's one option. The other option is you have them show you through the house. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both, so I'll give you the advantage and disadvantage. You decide what you want to do. For me personally, I most of the time have them show me through the house, so I'll go look at the house and have them go with me through it. But if there are times when I will not, that I will say I want to go look at it through the eyes of a buyer. Now, so here's what that usually looks like. If you have them show you through the house, the appointment will take longer. You are going to be at their house longer. So just know that. But the advantage to having them show you through the house is it allows you to get some connection and rapport with them that maybe you didn't have. So for me, that's usually that's how I decide if when I look at the house, am I going to have them show me through or am I going to go do it on my own? Is if I feel like I need more connection and rapport, I'm going to have them show me through the house. If I feel like I have good connection and rapport, then I'm probably going to say, I want to just go walk through the house and discover it through the eyes of a buyer. Look at it the way a buyer is going to look at it. Make sense? Okay. All right. So, and then we're going to do the overview. Now we're to the questions. Okay. So think of it this way. I like to think about this listing presentation being like the game of Jeopardy, where on the game show Jeopardy, all of the answers are on the board. And then the contestant has to come up with the question, right? Think of this as the same thing. All of the answers to the test, and when I say the test, what I mean by that is all of the answers to getting the seller to choose you as the agent. So again, that's what we're trying to create, is them to choose me. Everything that you need to do to get that to happen is contained within the site of them. It really boils down to, can you ask the questions, the right questions that will discover what it is that they're looking for in an agent of how they're going to choose who their agent's going to be. Okay. So what we are going to do then through these questions piece is we want to ask questions that will allow us to discover the answers to the test. Okay. So what we want to do then, and those of you guys that have been through my needs analysis class, then you'll see the connection right here between that is I want to start with questions that are open-ended. We don't want to ask yes/no questions or closed-ended questions. We want to ask questions that are what I call directives. And a directive is going to be describe for me or tell me about or share with me or help me understand. Okay, and then I'll give you some ideas of some of these that you'll want to use, but either describe for me. So as we're asking the questions, talking to the seller, we want to be asking questions that are directives. The idea of this is the way that your brain works is like a computer. So if we say to somebody, describe for me, and then whatever it is we're going to say after that, then what happens is you're giving an instruction to their brain that is basically saying, I want more detail than just a short answer. Okay. So I always want to start these questions and make sure that every question is either, hey, tell me about, or share with me, or help me understand, or describe for me. Okay. And usually the question that we like to start with is something along the lines of what they're wanting to accomplish. So share with me ultimately what you're trying to accomplish, or help me understand ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish in getting your home sold. Okay. Describe for me what you're ultimately wanting to get to take place or to accomplish in getting your home sold. So I always like to start with just that. It's just share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish. Now, why? Why would we want to start with that?
kind of high level. Like-
Okay.
Like the ultimate goal,
Perfect. That's exactly it.
is it because you have to downsize and because you're wanting to get rid of stairs, like, just, yeah, it's kind of a funnel, like you're.
Perfect.
Start wide and then you're gonna. narrow.
That's right. Yep. By starting with that it's very neutral is the way I say it, meaning we're not leading them to something that we want. It's just share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish. Now, let me pause for a minute and come back to this. Remember right here that this map, motivation, ability, and price is part of what we're trying to do with this, is what we're hitting on by saying, share with me ultimately what you're trying to accomplish, is we're now going to start to find out their motivation. What's the motivation? What's driving this? I want to sell my house, so that I know what motivation is there in getting their home sold. Okay, good. So I usually am going to start with that. Describe for me or share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish in getting your home sold. Please.
So I was doing some door knocking this past week. And I found a house where a person says, well, I might want to sell. And when I asked him, and what is the reason you want to sell? That's the way I worded. He said, well, I just want to get the cash out. I just want to cash out. I want to get the money out. And I said to him, well, and once that happens, where will you go? And he says, I don't know. So he didn't have, seems to me that the only thing he wanted is to get the money out of the house. I'm not sure for what reason. I'm just saying, this is the case, how will you tackle that one?
Yeah, good. So here's, and as you were saying that, here's what I was thinking. Is once you have said ultimately what are you wanting to accomplish, what we want to add next to that is the next piece of this is what I call prompters. We want to use a prompter. And prompters are going to be what else? Say more. Or keep going. So what I would have done then in that scenario, Luz, is I would have said, hey, so you want to, I would have repeated and affirmed basically. So you want to get the cash out of your home. That's great. Tell me more about that. And then I would see what they say. Ultimately, what you would want to find out is, so you needed to dig deeper to find out more. So what does he need the cash for? Like, is there something else that's going on? Like, there may be something behind it that's like, I need the cash so bad that I'm not even worried about where I'm going to live. I just need the cash for what, but that's what I want to find out. Because if there's motivation of like, I need the cash to pay whatever, a ransom because somebody kidnapped this kid. I don't know. I mean, not like they might not. I know, like, well, but it's like, I don't really, that if that's what it was, they don't care where they're gonna live. They're just, they need the money. Like,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
Well,
but he didn't say I'm buying, I'm moving somewhere. He's, I don't know. He's always.
Yeah, so just, for me, that's where you just gotta ask, so tell me more about that. And again, kind of back to what Chad said, I like to keep this as wide as possible to where like, just, I don't want to get it funneled in too much in the beginning. At the beginning is just, tell me more about that.
So I'm trying to remember exactly how the conversation went, but at some point he said to me, but I don't want my credit check. And I was thinking, we check your credit. But that was another
Yeah.
thing he said, I don't want my credit check.
Okay.
So maybe he's in really big debt and that's why he wants to sell
Yeah,
like
could be-
that.
could
because
be
he
the
said, no, don't want my credit check.
Yeah, could be that's what it is for sure. Okay, so I'll start with just describe for me what you ultimately are trying to accomplish. Then I will go to there. From there, I usually like to ask things like, so share with me or tell me about your past experience with real estate agents. So I'm usually going to say the next question using one of these directives, tell me about your past experience with real estate agents. And then they're going to say whatever they say. And then I'm going to do these prompters. Okay, tell me more about that or keep going. And I'm going to ask them, what are some things that if they've worked with agents in the past, what are things that agents did that you liked What are the things that you think they should have done that they didn't? See, I'm just gonna start, now remember, I'm gonna keep coming back to this. Ultimately, we're trying to get them to choose me, right? And I gotta build this connection and rapport. All of the answers to the test are contained within inside of them. So I've got to ask the questions to get the answers to the test. So I'm asking, tell me about your past experience with real estate agents. What did they do that you liked? Now, if they tell me the things that they liked, how is that giving me the answers to the test?
Tell you what to do.
Yeah, they're telling you what you need to do.
Not to.
Or, thank you, or I'm saying, tell me about things that didn't go well with your past agents and what do you think they should have done differently? And now they're gonna then tell me all the things that they should have done or not, what things not to do, what they wanted to have take place.
Well, not this time, but at one point I was talking to a lady and I didn't even ask her. She volunteered information. She said, I don't like my last agent because even though he take a good chunk of commission from my sale,
Mhm.
he said, she says, after that, he dropped me like a hot potato. That's what she said.
Okay, so good. So so let's assume you were interviewing that seller and they said that. Now you know what you need to take away from that piece of it to now when we get to number 4 of what makes me different. You better have a solution that is going to show them how you're not going to drop them like the hot potato after it's over. Does that make sense?
We have client events. We have.
That's right. Here's the kinds of things that I'm gonna do. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so I like to ask, tell me about your past experience, what you liked, what you didn't like, what do you think they should have done differently? Another question you may want to use. Now, contained in, I don't know if we do have a script here. Contained inside of our script books. So hopefully everybody has one. If not, see Sharon at the front desk. But contained in the script books on page, see if I can find it here.
It's towards the back.
Yeah, I'm almost there. On page, everything we're talking about is on page 39, by the way. And then page 42 has 21 questions for the listing presentation. So I'm gonna, not all the ones I'm giving you are necessarily in here, but most of them are. But I'm gonna give you a few that I like to use. So, but just know you can go there to look through, and you don't have to use all of those, but you can use some of those 21 questions just to give you ideas. But so for me, I love asking them after I've asked, tell me about past experience with agents, what you like, what you didn't like, what do you think they should have done? One of the other questions I will ask up here is, what would in your experience have to look like for you to feel like you would want to refer me to other people? Some version of that, of like I partially will tell them during this, like, I want to create a scenario where you are so satisfied or happy with how the service that I've given you that you're going to want to refer me to other people. What would that have to look like? And then they're going to now, remember, they're going to give me all the answers to the test. What does it have to look like? Okay, well, you would need to do this and this and this. Okay, and now I'm just going to be taking notes of all of those things. Okay. All right. Next question that I like to use. Share with me how price will affect your decision. So share with me how price will affect your decision. Now, when I say price, that could go one of two ways. They could interpret that I mean the price of their house, how the price of their house is going to affect the decision, or they could interpret that as the commission. So the reason I say that the way I do, hey, tell me how price is going to affect your decision, is I want to find out from them what they are thinking in terms of price, either of their house or the commission. It'll give you some insight. If they go immediately to commission, that tells you better create some serious value. You better make sure that you're showing value and separating yourself from the competition. If they go to the price of their house, that tells me they're more concerned with that than the commission. So I just use that as a kind of figure out where they're at. Okay. Let's see. The next one that I like to ask is, tell me what's important about the timing. So I'm going to ask some question around timing, of like, what's important about the timing of getting your home sold. What's that gonna tell me?
I'm motivated there.
Yeah, again, it's coming back to, we're trying to find out motivation and so both price and timing is gonna give me the ability as well. Remember, motivation, ability, and price. I'm trying to figure out the motivation, the ability, and the price. So that's gonna give me that. All right. The last question that I always do, the very last one that I ask during this, after I've asked all these others, and keep in mind, like I like to dig, similar to what I did with Lou's, if you know, I just need to get the money out. Okay, tell me more about that. Like I'm gonna keep saying, what else? Keep going. Tell me more about that. Keep going. Share with me more detail about that. The more information you get. Now, here's why. It's twofold. One is it's gonna help me create, how do I separate myself and create the value? But two, the more questions you ask and the more you, hey, tell me more about that and keep going. And as long as you're listening and repeating and validating them along the way, it creates this connection and rapport with them to where they feel like you've really listened to them, that you understand them, that you really care about them. That's what we're trying to create, is because remember, I got to get them to choose me before I worry about throwing out that I'm going to charge them a 7% commission. Well, it's true. Okay. Now, the last question then that I like to ask as part of this question section is going to be, what is your biggest concern? So I'm going to say, share with me your biggest concern, or I might say, share with me your biggest fear. Tell me about what's going to keep you up at night. What are you going to worry? What are you most worried about in getting your home sold? So by doing that is now going to then create for me again, I'm uncovering the answers to the test by doing it that way. Okay, so let me share with you an experience that an agent that I had worked with had in this. Now, this one took place in California. So this is an agent in California. They got the opportunity to go list a home that was at that time $15 million. Okay, the home was worth $15 million. It was an older couple. He had passed away. The husband passed away. So the wife's now in this $15 million home. She's older, and she's just like, it's time to sell it and move on. Like, it's too much house for me. So the agent was going to be competing against multiple other agents out there in the market. So the agent goes in and follows this process, does the thank, acknowledge, promise, gives the overview, starts asking the questions, gets to that question. What's your biggest concern? And here's what she says is, I don't know if you noticed when you walked through the house, I don't know if you noticed the carpet, that white carpet that was in whatever, I don't know what room it was in, but the white carpet in such and such room. And the agent said, yeah, I did notice that. It was beautiful. And she said, well, that was a present from my husband. And he spent like $100,000 to buy that carpet, handmade in Peru or something. I don't remember all the details, but there was, it meant a lot to her. And she said, the other two agents that I have met with told me they were going to put it on the office tour. They were going to do a board tour. They were going to do these open houses. And she said, all I could do was sit there, and every time they were talking about it, is I was picturing people just walking through this white carpet. And she was like, I just pictured like the carpet's going to be destroyed before I even move out. And it was a birthday present from her husband, who's now passed away. So that was her biggest concern, is I don't want to see my carpet destroyed. Okay. So I'll tell you what he did in just a minute, but that's the idea of this questions piece. When the whole point of asking the other of tell me about past agents and all that is to help us, yes, to get all that information. But part of what I'm trying to get is that connection and rapport. And then when I ask that question last of what's your biggest concern? What are you most worried about? At that point is when typically now they're going to share with me what their biggest concern is. Once I can now deal with what that biggest concern is, that creates a huge amount of value to you than anybody else. All right, so number 4. Any other questions on this before on the question section? Yeah.
So they use booties.
Yes, that is the answer. Yeah. That's what I was gonna, my punchline was gonna be, so you got to find the booties. I don't know, I was just gonna say, they didn't laugh like I thought they would, Rick.
I did.
I know, I
always
got
do.
you, I got a laugh from you, but. Yeah, you gotta find the booties. All right,
We're too preoccupied following the thing, yeah, not the police.
you were just too preoccupied, is that it?
Following.
Okay, I had you so engaged, you just, yeah, you didn't, all right. All right, so number 4 then is, this is where I'm gonna put plan of action, okay? So the next piece on this is, I want to create now a plan of action. Now, here's the idea of this, though. This is really going to be what separates me from the competition, okay? Now, so here's the hard part about me training you on this. The hard part of me training you on this is, I don't know what the seller is gonna say to you up here to be able to tell you, here's how you deal with it down here. But hopefully you understand enough from what we've talked about is all of the purpose of asking all of these questions up here is to get them to be giving me the information in such a way that down here I can say, okay, so now let's go back to the lady. So what the agent did is said, okay, your biggest concern is having the carpet destroyed. Let me tell you how I work. So here's the key piece on this. Under this plan of action, what you want to say is something along the lines of this. Most agents, and then you're going to fill in the blank. And then I do, let me tell you how I work. Or you could say it as, let me tell you what makes me different. That may be actually even a better way of saying it. Let me tell you what makes me different than other agents. Because remember, the whole point I'm trying to do now in this plan of action is about separating myself and creating value. So I want to show them, and typically, so here's how I would have handled that with, if I'm that agent that was sitting there with the lady, which this is what he did, is the agent said, okay, yes, most agents want to bring a ton of people through your house. They want to get all the agents from the board to walk through it. They want to get all the agents from their office to walk through it. They want to hold open houses to get a ton of people walking through your house. The reason they want to do that is that it makes you as the seller feel like that you're working really hard on their house. That's not how I work. So that would, and maybe even that's, you could do a not me or something. Not me, something along those lines of, let me tell you how I work. Let me show you what makes me different. Something like that. So what the agent said is, yes, most agents are going to want to bring a ton of people through your house because it typically makes the seller feel like you're doing your job. But that's not how I work. Let me tell you how I work. I'm actually only going to bring people through your house who we know could qualify. That way we aren't destroying your carpet. So I'm only going to bring people through that we know can afford to buy a $15 million house. And I'm going to also go down to the medical supply store and I'm going to buy a box of booties that we're going to put by the front door. And everybody that comes through is going to put on these booties before they walk through your house. Now, guess who she ended up listing her home with? Yeah. Over a $5 box of booties because they were willing to go down to protect the carpet. See, that's just the idea of this is figure out up here what their biggest concerns. Now, let me say this. Let me pause for a minute and say this. I have had my license since 1996. So what, over 26 years now, I guess is probably what that is. I have spent the last 15 plus years training agents. Probably the number one question that I get is, I need a good listing presentation. I need a good listing presentation. And what agents mean by that when they say I need a good listing presentation is they want something fancy to go give to the seller. And what I have learned is they don't care about that. Like, that's not important. You are the listing presentation is the way I like to say it. Is keep in mind, they're not listing with a fancy brochure that you brought. And if they are, in fact, I had an agent, again, this was another agent down in California. when I go down and train down there, I spend a lot of time training them on open houses and how to do an open house. And I had an agent, not long after John and George first bought the California company. We did an event in Vegas where we brought any agent from California that wanted to go to Vegas and all the ones from Utah that wanted to go down there to an event. That then we had this like a meet and greet kind of a thing where we tried to get all the agents to meet each other and stuff. And I'm down there, I had already been down and done some trainings down in California, and I'm at this meeting. And this agent, and I won't tell you who it was, but since this is being recorded. But she walks up to me, she was a top agent down there. She walks up to me and says, "Hey, I got a bone to pick with you." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And she said, "I understand that you're training, you said at an open house, don't have any flyers either." And I was like, "Oh yeah, we don't want to have flyers in open house." And she's like, "But I have a lot of sellers that they like my flyers." And I was like, "Well, that's cool. I'm glad they like your flyers. I still don't think you should have them at an open house." But she goes, "Well, but they're listing with me because of my flyers." And I didn't say this because, again, she's a top agent of the company, but inside my head, I was like, if they're listing with you because of your flyer, there's a problem. Like, that's not, and it's not true. Like, they are not choosing you because you have a pretty flyer. So just know, a pretty presentation, which, by the way, you can access off of Moxie Present. So if you go onto MoxieWorks, go onto Moxie Present, it'll give you this beautiful presentation if you want to use it. But I'm telling you, you don't need it. What you need is just go in and do this, find out the information, and then be able to present it to them. So let me give you a few other examples of how you would use this. Okay. So did you have a question?
Yes, when you're talking, don't need flyers, what exactly you are referring to?
If you ever hold an open house, do not have any flyers at the open house.
Like the half bedrooms, bathrooms, price. all
Yeah, that have pictures of the house and the beds and the baths and the price. Do not have that if you ever do an open house.
Okay,
And the reason is, do people really want a flyer when they walk in an open house? Why do they ask for a flyer? Because they ask for them. Why do they ask for one?
It's a common practice. They are just used to us.
Okay, that's part of it, but there's more to it than that.
They're not getting the information.
No,
Take
no,
the information and they go out.
that's right. They don't have to talk to you that way. If they get a flyer, they don't have to talk to you. If you don't have a flyer, what does it force them to do?
Up to you.
To talk to you. And what's the purpose of us being at an open house?
talk to people, they can.
No, it's not to talk to people.
Get clients.
Find
Get
buyers.
Yes, set appointments. It's to set appointments. So, and if you want to set an appointment, you got to talk to the people. And if you have a flyer, they aren't going to talk to you. So don't have a flyer. So they have to talk to you. Because they don't really care. The only reason they ask for a flyer is then they don't have to talk to you. They don't have to say how much is this or whatever. So
Not even the MLS with the information on the house.
do not have that yet. You just say, I forgot it. I left it at my office. It's on my desk. I forgot it. But watch this. So let's do it. This is not an open house class, but let's assume you just walked into my open house, ask me for a flyer, and I'm going to show you what I would do.
Oh, well, I'm just coming to the neighborhood and now you just would like some information about the house. So those, those.
Yeah.
Papers. that
Yep, actually,
have-
crazy me, I actually left them sitting on my desk. But I would be happy to get you one. When could I drop it off to you? See, now I just use that as a way to ask for an appointment to go meet with her. But guess what she's gonna say?
Here is my email. Send it.
Or she's gonna go, I really don't, they don't need a flyer. They just don't want to talk to you is why they just know that they don't want to talk to you. But you want to talk to them, so no flyer. All right, back to this.
For you.
Yeah, no flyer for you. It's like from Seinfeld, the soup. Yeah. No soup for you. Okay. So plan of action. So I'm just going to give you a few other ideas, but keep in mind on this plan of action section, the idea is find out the information here through asking questions about needs, wants, and expectations. Then down here, tell them how you're going to meet those expectations. And if you do that, you're going to create the value that you want to create. Now, so let me show you what I mean. On the plan of action, let's say that up here, some of the most common things that come up is going to be up here is communication. Maybe they had a bad experience with another agent where they're saying, I listed with an agent And in fact, I remember a guy, he might still be even with our company right now. I don't know. He's been with us and gone a number of times, but this guy he was like the top agent at the office when I was brand new. I was a brand new agent. And in fact, let me make sure he's not on here before.
Well, yeah, throw him under the bus.
Well, because I was gonna say, well, I won't say what I was gonna say, and then even if he's not on, but even if he wasn't, wouldn't matter. But my manager at the office I was in was like bragging this guy up of like, well, I guess I'll say it. That this guy was making dog food bags, and then he came into real estate. Now, remember, this is 1996. He goes, and he came into real estate, and he made $90,000 his first year in real estate. Well, not long after that, I found out, in fact, here's what happened. I had gone out on a for sale by owner listing presentation. And during the listing presentation, I figured out I didn't want to work with this person because when we got to price, what I found out is their motivation wasn't there. The ability was there, but the price they wanted to sell the home for was so unrealistic that I left. I walked out and was like, I don't want your listing. And I remember I got back to the office. Do you know who I'm talking about now? Okay. So I go back to the office and I remember I walked in and somebody else said, how'd that for sale by owner listing appointment go? And I said, yeah, I walked away because the price was too high. And this guy goes, who was it? What's their phone number? I'll take it. I don't care what price it was. Well, what I found out later on is what he would do. He was common for, he would go list a property, put the sign in the yard, and then he would never call it. If he never got an offer, if it was overpriced, he never called him again, ever. So it's not uncommon that you go out and you meet with people and you ask them, tell me about your past experience. It is not going to be uncommon for people to say, I had a bad experience with an agent, and it boils down to communication. Remember, I started this whole class today of like, your job is to be a leader, and the number one skill of a leader is communication. Well, most of the time, it is not going to be surprising when you ask about past experience that it comes out that there's an issue in terms of how people communicate. So how would I do that down in plan of action? So let's say that I went out there and Jocelyn, you're the seller. And in the process of me going through this, and I ask her, tell me about your past experience, she tells me, well, yeah, I listed with this agent that they put my home on the market and then I never heard from them ever again. And like, my fear is that's what's going to happen again. Okay. You know, I'm going to go, you know what, Jocelyn, unfortunately, most agents, that's how they work. See, no matter what they've set up here, if it's a negative kind of a thing, I'm going to do yeah, unfortunately, that's not an uncommon thing. Most agents work that way, but not me. Let me tell you how I work. Let me tell you what makes me different than every other agent out there. And then I'm going to do this. So Jocelyn, one of the things that I do is you can count on that I am going to call you every single week, no matter what. And in fact, I do all of my seller calls and then whatever day or time you do it. And I had times in my career where I always did them on Friday. I had other times that I always did them on Monday. So whatever, I always think you either should do them on Friday or Monday. You decide. For me, the reason I like doing them on Friday was that I usually could have the weekend to if I did all my calls with my sellers on Friday, they weren't going to call me on Saturday to tell me how frustrated they were their house hasn't sold because I already gave them the chance on Friday. Other people say I like to call on Monday because then you can update them as to what happened over the weekend. So whatever your preference is, decide. I personally always liked to do it on Friday because then I didn't have to worry that for whatever reason, it seemed to me a frustrated seller tended to be more frustrated on a Saturday. I don't know, is what it seemed like. So if they were going to be frustrated, I wanted to deal with it on Friday, not on Saturday. It was just kind of where I got to. So you decide for you. But like I say, other people always said, well, I like to call on Monday because then I can tell them what, about all the showings that happened on the weekend. Whatever you want to do is fine.
It's about setting expectations, right?
But it is about setting expectations. So I would say, so Jocelyn, let me tell you how I work. So remember, it's most agents, that's not uncommon. That they put your home on the market, they don't worry about it until they get an offer. And if they never get an offer, you never hear from them again. But that's not how I work. Let me tell you how I work. I call my seller every Friday and I do my calls for my sellers on Fridays between 11 and noon. So now watch this. what number would you like me to call you on this Friday between 11 and noon to give you an update?
Can you remember?
If you blah, 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 make it up. 8675309, right?
Yeah.
So, thanks, Rick.
That's a
I'm
song.
glad Rick's here, 'cause at least Rick will laugh at my jokes. You got it, you just didn't think it was funny. apparently.
Get old for me, I don't know why.
All right. The younger ones are like, what are you talking about? Do you know the song, Monet? 8675309, yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Delaney. Delaney knows it. Do you know it, JC?
What's it? song?
Yeah.
Look, you can sing it.
Yeah, there you go. You can give me the tune. All right. Good. So, okay, but notice what happens though, if I say, I'm gonna call you on Friday, what number would you like me to call you at? If they give me a number, what are they basically telling me?
Then maybe.
This is
What
a-
would you?
Yeah, this is a subtle close again that I've done. So notice I subtly closed up here. I'm subtly closing down here, maybe not as much there, but on this, I just did it again. So hey, I'm gonna contact my sellers every single Friday. And if they had told me they were concerned, I might have even said, so Jocelyn, we will put in the contract. If I fail to call you on a Friday, you can get out of this contract. All you'd have to do is call my office and say, Russ didn't call me on Friday to give me an update. I want out of the contract. So if they were that concerned up here, I'm gonna help get rid of that concern by, you can count on that I'm gonna call you every Friday between 11 and noon. So what number would you want? And I might say, would you want a call or a text? Text, okay, so I'm just gonna ask them what they want. But so notice now how I'm taking the concerns or whatever bad experience or good experience, and then down here telling them how that's exactly what I do. Or this is how I'm gonna put you at ease on that piece of it, okay? Now, go ahead.
So during this process, body language and eye contact versus you're ready to jot down already, what number shall I call? Does this make an impression that you're already making notes?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Moving in the right direction?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, be taking notes. Yeah, and if I failed to say that, take notes up here for sure. Yes, thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
They pick up a pen, shut up and sign. Yes. Too many people talk themselves right out of the listing.
That's true too.
Yep.
Okay. Now, so let me give you one other one that to just kind of show you another example of how to do this piece of it. Let's say, and this doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally you'll have somebody that says, I don't want a key box on my property because I had a bad experience, or they've heard of somebody like coming in and accessing their property and without them knowing, we were sitting there eating dinner and all of a sudden somebody just came walking in our house. So let's say that somebody had that as a concern. Down here, I'm gonna go, yeah, unfortunately, the way most agents work is, and I'll even sometimes paint the picture even worse of saying, and this is true that some agents do this, that I would say some agents, you will use a key box that's just a contractor key box. So that when they're punching in the code to open the key box, the buyer could be watching them put in the code and they could come back and access it anytime. But not me. That's not how I work. You don't have to worry about somebody accessing my key box. The key box that I use now, so notice what I'm about to say is true for every key box that you use from the board if you get them, but most agents don't know this and or talk about it. So again, I'm not going to talk about this on every time, only if they brought it up here as a concern. I want to be really clear on that. If this was a concern, I would do this. If they didn't, I'm not going to do this. But I would say to them, most agents are going to use what you're saying. They're going to have the ability to just go open it up and they could come in anytime. Not me. The lock boxes that I use are going to have a timer on it that will not let people access it middle of the night. Now, like I said, every one of them pretty much does that. But I'm saying that. Then I'm going to say, and based on what you've said, I'm going to put something else on there that's called a call before showing code on my lockbox. That even if somebody doesn't have if they don't have an appointment, they won't be able to access it because they won't know the code. See, I'm just gonna paint the picture of most agents are gonna do it the way you're afraid of, but not me. This is how I'm gonna do it. This is how I'm gonna protect, make sure that you don't have people walk in the middle of your dinner. Does that make sense? So those are the kinds of things that I'm gonna do here. Let me give you just one other one. Let's say they were concerned about how it looked or something, how the property was gonna be presented. Like, for instance, what's making me think of this is I had an agent yesterday, might have been Tuesday, either Tuesday or yesterday, bring up to me that they had a seller asking, do you have a professional photographer come out? So that's what's making me think of this now. So if they were concerned about something like that, I would down here say, most agents are going to use their cell phone to take a picture of your house. That's what most agents do, but not me. I hire a professional photographer to come out. And I may even say to the seller, have you gone and done any searches online looking at properties? And they're going to say yes. Did you notice that there are some that look really good and some that you're like, did a 3-year-old take that picture? Like that's, and they're going to say, yeah. Well, unfortunately, most agents are going to do it on their own, but not me. I hire a professional photographer that's going to come out and take pictures that has the wide angle lenses that's going to make your property look the best that we can. So, Jocelyn, when would you like me to have the photographer come out and take the pictures for your house? So now notice what I just did. Again, so she brought it up here. I'm saying most agents do it here. Here's how I do it. When would you like the photographer to come out and take pictures? See, if she tells me that, what is she telling me? Yeah, like notice all these little things that I've done along the way that are showing me, and that's I'm figuring out if she's chosen me or not. Okay, so are we good on how to deal with plan of action? Any questions on it? All right, number 5 then. But before we go to number 5, let me draw a line across here. The next thing that I'm going to do is I need to find out now, because number 5 is going to be price. And remember what I said here? What did we say?
You don't talk about it until you.
I'm not-
Know that you are chosen.
Yeah, so don't go to this step 5, which is price, unless what? They've chosen me. So now I gotta, so the reason I draw a line across there is I gotta now find out if they've chosen me. So here's how I'm gonna do that. So let's see, who should I pick on? Everybody's like, oh, JC's like me. Okay, so here's how I would do it then. So with JC, so now that we've covered all of this, before we go to price, I'm gonna say, so JC, how do you feel about everything we've talked about?
I feel well prepared.
You feel like you're prepared?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about me or Century 21 in getting your home sold?
I'm still a little hesitant, but I'm not sure. You presented a good plan and I'm still hesitant.
Okay. Now, if he didn't say that, if he would have just said, I feel good, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Just, I feel good about it. Or even if what he said is fine. What I'm going to do right here before I go to price is this. So JC, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you're ready to sign the paperwork and get going on getting your home sold, and 1 being like, get out of my house right now. Where are we at?
Solid.
Solid 8. Okay, good. So what would have to happen in order for us to get to a 10?
A little more planning on what the market looks like.
Okay, good. So now note, so here's what I'm doing. So notice what I'm doing is at this point, I'm just asking him on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? 10 means you're ready to sign the paperwork and get going. 1 means like you can't stand anything I've had to say and you wish I would shut up and get out of here right now. Where are we at? Anything less than a 10, if he says anything less than a 10, I'm just going to then say, so what has to happen to get to a 10? What have I left out? What have I not answered? Where are you not feeling comfortable? See, ultimately, I'm saying, have you chosen me? And if you have, great. If you haven't, then where am I falling short? And they should tell you where you're falling short. So if he's, go ahead.
My wife and I need to talk about.
Okay, good. So, okay, so are we, I'm assuming your wife is there then.
Yeah, but we want to sleep over.
Okay, perfect. So here's how I'd handle it. So you and your wife wanna talk about it. You wanna sleep on it for the night. Hey, if I were you, I would feel the exact same way. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and get everything signed and ready to go. But I'll leave the paperwork with you. If in the morning you're not good with it, you could just tear it up and we don't worry about it. But if you are good, I can today get going on ready to get it marketed so that tomorrow when you say go, it's ready. So if he said, I'm at a 9, well, what would you have to be at a 10? We need to sleep on it. Great. If that's the only thing holding you back, then I'll go to price. If, what did you say you were concerned with, JC?
The market.
Oh, yeah, we haven't really talked about the market or the price. Okay, so is it safe to assume though, JC, if that's the next thing we're gonna talk about is the price? So is it safe to assume if we can come to an agreement on price that we would be at a 10? Okay, great. Then I'm good. Now I go. What if though, for some reason they said, we've got 3 other people we're still gonna interview.
This client I have told me, he says, let me talk to, because he had an agent that helped him buy a house. Says, let me talk to my agent about this.
Okay,
And he says, because if I go with you, she will need to know that.
okay.
And that was kind of a concern to him.
Yeah, so in that scenario, I would say, great, let's go ahead and get everything signed. You can talk to him and then tomorrow you can let me know I've talked to him, we're good to go.
No, he said that to me when I said the signing part. He says, let me talk to her about that. And I said to him, what is that you need to do that? Well, I just don't want to kind of just kind of blindside her and say that we're not going
Okay,
to work
sure.
for her.
If it would make it easy, so here's what I would say, Luz, if it'll make it easier for you, so you don't have to do it, I'll be happy to call and let him know.
Okay, I didn't say that, but he insisted on doing that.
Yeah,
But
but I would say if you want, just because I know that's gonna be an uncomfortable conversation, I will call and talk to him and let him know how bad you felt. And I will say, I was a high pressure, I really pushed and I got you to sign, and it's my fault, not yours.
I don't know that he wanted me to call. He really wanted to.
I'm
do
just
that
giving you some ideas.
Because they are going to be neighbors where they buy.
Okay,
He
sure.
and the agent are going to be neighbors.
Okay.
Well,
Cool.
here, the reality is if it's not high enough value, they're gonna keep going back to the objection.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, you've left out some value.
Okay,
You need to get to that value answer, because if the offering is high enough, they don't care about it.
Yeah. So here's the thing, here's the key thing. I am not gonna, so if he said that to me, if he said, I want to talk to them before we do it, I would say, great. You do that, you talk to him, and then we will get back together and we'll finish talking about, like, I want to be really, really clear on this piece. Especially if this is a for sale by owner and expired, or maybe you were just outdoor knocking and somebody gave you a listing presentation, but they're going to be interviewing more people. 2 things that I wanted to make sure you understand. One is they are going to list with the last person they meet with. Now, I want that to be me on this first appointment. Like, that's what part of what I mean is, like, if I can get them to not meet with the other people, they're going to list with me. When I say they're going to list with the last one they meet with,
want to be the.
I want to be the last one, but I want to be the first one and the last. But if I can't get them to do that, if for some reason that it's just like they are going to meet with the other person no matter what, I'm going to say, great, let's hold off on talking about the pricing strategy until you've met with that person. And then I want to meet with you after you've met with that person. So when are you going to meet with them? And I'm going to try to set up an appointment for right after to go back. Now, but here's the thing, just keep in mind, if you leave without listing it, there's a good chance you're not getting the listing. I just want to make sure you understand that piece of it is, so I want to do everything I can to get it listed before I leave. Because if you leave and they meet with somebody else, you run the risk that other person then swoops in and they sign with them and then they call and cancel with you. So you want to do everything you can, but if for some reason I can't get it, I am not going to talk. Remember, don't talk price till they've chosen me. If they have not chosen me, I'm not talking price. I will say, great, let's put this on hold. You meet with them. I'll come back and we'll finish talking about price. Now, what are they gonna say to that though? Well, can't you just tell me the price? Well, tell me what you think the price is. And I'm just gonna say, you know, I have proprietary information that I use in terms of getting your home sold and pricing your home. And what I don't want to do is give you my proprietary information and then you go list with somebody else and use my proprietary information. So meet with them and then we'll get together. See, I want to create a little bit of curiosity that has them go, well, what's this proprietary information you have? So that they'll still want to meet with me. Does that make sense? All right. Now, so we good on, don't go forward unless they say, yeah, if we can come to an agreement on price and commission, then you're it. Great, then I'll go forward. Anything else, I got to answer it before I go to price, what their concerns were. Because otherwise, when you get to commission, that might be like, well, yeah, but I don't want to pay that commission. So as long as they're good with everything but price and commission, I'll move forward. Okay, so now on price, what we said is we're going to start with first the macro. So now that we're going to talk price, I'm going to start with the big picture. So if I asked you guys today, tell me what's going on in the market today, how would you answer? What would you say? And I'm not looking for anything specific, just how would you answer it?
It's a great market. It's a seller's market.
Okay,
It's still a great time to sell a home. If sellers are willing to negotiate. If your house is priced correctly. And priced aggressively to sell. We'll get it sold.
okay, good. Anybody else, anything else you would add? I can think of at least one other thing I might throw in. What's happening to inventory?
It's going up.
Or not,
So how's that going to affect them?
they're not as competitive.
That's right. So that's the only thing.
Buyers have more shop. like,
That's right.
they're
Is
ability
the
to shop.
only thing I would want to be saying under this macro is, hey, let me tell you what's going on. Inventories are starting to climb. It's still a good market. It's still like there's still good time to sell. But just know we can't just throw it out there at any price anymore. We've got to be a little more thoughtful in how we go about it. So that's how I would be doing this. Then the
Like, setting that expectation.
Yep. Then the next piece I'm gonna go through is the pricing. And what I'm gonna talk to them in terms of pricing is I'm gonna be saying, let me tell you how this works. Is I like to tell them my job as your agent is I am an interpreter of the market. My job is to interpret the market for you. The market speaks in a cryptid language and I'm gonna interpret it for you. And this is what that looks like then, is so I'm gonna bring this pricing stuff up here for a second, okay? And what I'm gonna tell them is we want to keep track every week of the number of showings that we're getting and the number of offers we're getting. And in how the market is today, I would say 2 to 3 weeks. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we want to evaluate the number of showings we've gotten and the number of offers. If we've had no showings, and so no showings and no offers within that first 2 to 3 weeks, we are at least 7% overpriced. So we should reduce the price 7 to 10%. If we've had some showings during that time, and I would define some as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, we're at least 5% and overpriced, and we should reduce the price between 5 and 7. A home will sell when it's within 4%, or it'll generate an offer, I should say. It'll generate offers if it's within 4% of where it should be. So no showings, no offers, you need to reduce it between 7 and 10%. Some showings, 1 to 3, or no offers. So when I say to them, I've got proprietary information, this is part, most agents don't have a pricing strategy. Most agents in this market are just go about it as they would 3 or 4 weeks later, go back and go, we need to reduce the price. How much? I don't know, 10,000. Like they don't really have a strategy. And this is our strategy. So this is where I say, I don't want to give you, if you teach them this, they'll go list with somebody else and follow this strategy. And I don't want them to do that. So I say, this is my proprietary pricing strategy. Got it? Now, there's a few other things that I'll teach you some other day in a CMA class, but
So sorry, I don't have my good glasses, so the some showings, but no, first, what percentage?
1 to 3, 5, between 5 and 7%.
5 and 7.
Yes. All right. Once I've gone through that with them, then I'm gonna pull out and do the CMA. Where I'm gonna run through, here's why this house, here's 3 or 4 solds, here's 3 or 4 that are under contract, here's 3 or 4 that are active. And then if you want to, you can do 3 or 4 that are expired. I usually don't, that's just personal preference. A lot of agents still do the expireds, but. And then you can say, which category do you want your house in? The solds, the under contract, or active, or expired? And then they're gonna say, sold, okay, then that means we should price it where the ones that are sold are, because if we price it where the expireds are, guess what happens? You're gonna be an expired, so which category do you want to fit in? Okay, so I'm gonna go through the CMA with them to land on a price. Then once we've done that, and we've agreed on a price, then I can go to number 6 down here, which is close. And hopefully you've seen all along the way how I've been sort of getting ready for the close the whole time, to where when I get to this, once we've landed on the price, I can now say, great. When did you want to get started? Do you want your house to hit the market on Friday or Saturday? Which would you prefer? Okay, great, Wednesday, let's get going.
Get ahead of the market.
Yep, so notice, if you've done this right, like you sort of talked about closing here, you sort of talked about it here, maybe not so much here. Here, I've talked about it a bunch of times, every time, hey, when we put your home on the market, this is how I'm gonna do it, and then when do you want the photographer to come, and how should we, whatever. And then down here, we got the price, now it's just like, great, when did you want to get started? How soon do you want it to hit the market? They say, great, I just need you to sign the paperwork. All right, questions?
Where in the process would you somewhere say that? What part of the property would you like us to put the sign?
Yeah, I could probably do it up in here somewhere or down, yeah,
Which gives another nod.
yeah, which would be another one, yep.
What part you talk about the commission?
Yeah, great question. So notice that to this point, I didn't talk about the commission ever. So what I would do then is when I would go through it is after they've said, yes, we want to get started on whenever, when I go through then the listing paperwork is where I would go through and explain, hey, so this section of the listing agreement says this. Section 2 is the commission, shows that it's a 7% commission. We're going to give 3 or 3.5 to whoever brings in the buyer and blah, blah, So I just go through it when you do that. And here's the thing, keep in mind, like NAR does a survey every year of home buyers and sellers. And in that survey, one of the questions they ask is, did you get a reduced commission? And if the person says yes, the next question is, who brought it up? Guess who brings up reducing the commission most of the time?
Yeah.
It's the agent. So don't just assume. In fact, I was on a phone call with a friend of mine this week about a lot that he saw in Provo that he might want to buy. And he said to me, we're not sure if we'll build on it, but we're thinking we might want to buy it and we'll just hold on. And then in the next few years, we'll decide if we want to build on it or not. But if not, and we're going to sell it, how much would it be? Would it like it's 6 or 7%, right? And I go, yeah. So notice, and then has it been 2 years since we did the one in North Salt Lake?
Year and a half.
Yeah, a year and a half or so ago, Rick and I went out to a lady to help her get her property sold. And while we were there, she goes, so what is the commission? And Rick goes, 7%. And she goes, oh, so it hasn't changed. So my point in all of that is don't just assume that everybody thinks that they want a 4 or a 5% commission. Like a lot of times it's the agent bringing it up and they may be like, oh, wow, I thought it was 7. Sweet. It's
What
only
about the other one? That we did. When you said, I wish we could have got a 7, I says we can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a whole different story.
It was
So
fun,
anyway,
but,
What do you do on commercials?
refer it for me. I don't do commercial. So for me, I just typically don't do commercial, but so,
between 6 and 7,
but yeah.
maybe 10, depending on what it is. draw ground, 10.
Yeah.
Anything else between 6 and 7. They don't, they're even more so. They don't care. It's all in how you present it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monet lives in that world a little bit with Dave. And, you know, it's just a great place to be. I'm always like, oh yeah, 7%. I go, okay, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, for
So-
sure.
Quick question.
Yeah.
On, and maybe this isn't part of this class, it's maybe more the CMA class, but you get to a point where you're doing a CMA, appraisers can go back 200 days, right?
Slide.
Appraisers can go back 200 days, but where we've been, appraisal, like everything now is going to appraise, right?
Mhm.
When you're doing a CMA, should we be maybe even going back maybe 30 days to price ahead of the market, or kind of what are your guys's,
So yeah, for me,
you know, because with the way that the market is shifting kind of really fast right now from a CMA standpoint. I mean, looking back 200 days, like,
Yeah.
whoa.
so I'll tell you,
You're gonna be priced pretty high,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need to be where the market's going.
yeah, so for me, I don't care what the market is. I rely, and I'll show you in that CMA class, but I rely heavily on 45 days, no matter what.
45 days.
It's a 45-day window back that I like
Right.
to rely on.
Right.
And based on that, then from there, I look at how many have sold in the last 45 days, and I'm looking at how many if, let's say there's 5 of that type of property that have sold in the last 45 days, how many are there for sale today that to choose from? Because if there's less than 5, prices are going up. If there's 10 or 15,
Right.
prices are probably stagnant or coming down.
And my real answer to any client that's asking is extremely simple. It is what a home is worth is what a buyer can get for their money.
Yeah.
So competition is highly, highly important. You got these 5 homes, where are you at conjunction with that? To get them emotionally connected to the one you're selling, you need to be here, which may push it up. Because we always want what we can't have, right?
Right.
And then we say, well, I know where I'm gonna put my Christmas tree, so I'm gonna outbid Russ.
Yep.
I'm gonna get it. So just remember, it's what a buyer can get for their money in any given market.
Yep.
Highly important in the market we're in.
Yeah, supply and demand, so.
Yep.
Cool, okay, so thanks for being here. Classes, just FYI, all the peak classes now are at 11 o'clock instead of 10. It's because we want to really give people time to get that prospecting in. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 o'clock, and I'll send reminders too, but thanks for being here.
Woo!